the headquarters of the University of London and the headquarters of the School of Advanced Study, and to the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. My name is Philip Murphy. I'm Director of the Institute and Deputy Dean of the School. For over 65 years, the Institute of Commonwealth Studies has been a forum for research and discussion on the Commonwealth and its member states. And as such, it's an enormous pleasure and a great privilege to be able to host this lecture by one of the most significant figures in the modern history of Southeast Asia, His Excellency Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad. His career will be very well known to you. Of course, he is a graduate of the University of Malaya. He practiced as a medical doctor before joining the UMNO in the 1950s. He was elected to Parliament over 50 years ago now, in 1964. In the 1970s, he served as Minister of Education and Minister of Trade and Industry, before becoming only the fourth Prime Minister of Malaysia in 1981, and of course, the longest serving Prime Minister of Malaysia. We have a particular reason to be grateful to him at the Institute. He very kindly agreed to be interviewed by my colleague Sue Onslow for a major oral history project on the history of the Commonwealth, our Commonwealth Oral History Project, charting the history of the Commonwealth since the establishment of the Secretariat in 1965. All those interviews, including Dr. Mahathir's, are up on our website if you would like to look at that after the session. We would also like to thank the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, IDEAS for short, for co-sponsoring this event. And at this point, I'd like to invite its Chief Executive, Wan Saiful Wan Jan, to introduce Dr. Mahathir.
Thank you very much. It is a real honor to be here. I have a long, history quite a while back with the Commonwealth Policy Studies Unit, an entity that does not exist anymore now. I was told when I was interning here many years ago. I want to say thank you very much to the Institute for Commonwealth Studies for generously supporting this event and providing us with this very nice venue for this event. I contacted them only last week, towards the end of last week, and about this visit, and it is really wonderful that within such a short time they managed to gather so many people in the audience and provide such a lovely room as well. Let me very briefly tell you about IDEAS, Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs. We are an independent think tank based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We do research and advocacy on various issues, focusing especially on rule of law and governance, or the lack thereof in the context of Malaysia lately. No, I shouldn't really say that. Malaysia is a country, as you know, that has very sharp cleavages when it comes to politics. Many of us here are Malaysians, and I'm sure we appreciate that. But we at IDEAS, we try very hard to make sure that our reach is cross-partisan in nature. That means political leaning is not something that we worry too much about. We focus on conveying our message, and we talk and work with everyone across the political spectrum. And that brings me to this event and to introduce Dr. Mahathir. Let me just provide a very brief background. I think Dr. Mahathir really does not need any introduction. He was Malaysia's longest serving Prime Minister, and that means he is also, if I can say, a very controversial one. Perhaps ironically, he is now following in the footsteps of someone he did not agree with quite frequently, and that was Malaysia's first Prime Minister, Almarhum Tunku Abdul Rahman. And what I mean when I say he's following that footsteps is way into his retirement, he's still causing controversy in the country. So I don't want to delay us from getting into that controversy. Let me just end now by saying thank you again to the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, and I'm sure we will have a good event, and let us have a good event. So let me welcome the Tuan Mahathir.
Thank you, Wan Saiful, Mr. Philip Murphy, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to the organizers for inviting me to speak to such a distinguished audience. And I didn't expect so many people to turn up. I'm quite sure they turn up, not because of me, but because of what's happening in Malaysia. I think a lot of you would have some knowledge about what is happening in Malaysia, so I wouldn't dwell on that too long. I must say that Malaysia is going through a very difficult period. We have always expected our prime ministers to work hard for the country, so much so that we give prime ministers, or we accord the prime minister more power than is provided in the Constitution. And now we are seeing abuses of power on an unprecedented scale. What has happened, of course, is that this Prime Minister believes that cash is king. In other words, he is saying that bribery will master everything. Bribery would make him popular. I mean, you have to bribe people, you need money. Prime Minister's pay is not very big. I was once Prime Minister, I knew that I couldn't afford to bribe people. But in order to bribe effectively, he had to have money. Of course, he started off with trying to acquire the Terengganu Institute for the development of Terengganu, because Terengganu happens to have oil resources, and he needed the resources as collateral in order to borrow money for what he wants to do. But unfortunately for him, the Menteri Besar as well as the Sultan was not very happy with the way he handled borrowings by TIA. And so that money that he borrowed for TIA was transferred to a new business unit called 1MDB. 1MDB is supposed to be a 100% government company, and it received 1 million ringgit as capital. But on that basis, on the basis that the government is backing him, he borrowed 42 billion ringgit, 42,000 times the amount of money he has as capital. This is quite unusual, but we were quite happy to see him starting this business, because we thought that he was going to contribute towards the income for the government. But instead of that, we discovered later that he was doing things which were quite wrong. In the first place, he used the money to buy power plants at a price above market price. It is very strange for government to pay more than market price. Normally, government can squeeze people and pay less than market price. But he paid much more than market price. And this raises many questions. And then, of course, he borrowed money through Goldman Sachs. And he borrowed, well, several billion US dollar. But he paid 10% commission to Goldman Sachs. This again is a very big sum of money. And on the top of that, of course, Goldman Sachs charged for services, etc. So he was doing it things which ordinary people find quite strange. After that, of course, he invested apart from the power plant in a so-called Saudi petroleum company, which was supposed to have concessions in Argentina and in Turkmenistan. Then the decision was made without proper discussion in the board, and because of that, one of the board members decided to resign. But he gave instruction that they should go ahead with this joint venture with Petro Saudi, and decided to give $1 billion as contribution to the 40% share of this joint venture. These things were being done not in a proper manner, and of course eventually we discovered that the money did not go to Petro Saudi, that the money was invested in Cayman Islands, and then in the end the money was lost. He couldn't explain where the money is. So, and then later on, a foreign newspaper reported that he had 681 million US dollar in his personal account. That in itself is wrong. No prime minister should have that kind of money in his personal account, no matter whether he is given the money, donated, or some charitable organization were being very generous, but the Prime Minister of Malaysia should not have that kind of money. When he was asked where he got the money, he explained that it was a donation from some Arabs. It seems that the condition of the contribution was that he could put it in his own account and do what he likes with the money. Now, I don't read anywhere in history about people giving that kind of money and telling the Prime Minister that he can do what he likes with the money. And of course, he failed to convince people about this. And I don't want to go on this thing because I'm quite sure you know a lot of it. Much of the revelation was made by newspapers largely because the newspapers in Malaysia were censored under his control. They can only praise him and not say anything about his wrongdoings. He dismissed the reports by newspapers because they have evil intention to overthrow a democratically elected leader of Malaysia. But then lately, of course, the Department of Justice of America made public a report which implicated him, although his name was not mentioned, but they referred to Malaysian official number 1. Subsequently, of course, his own minister said openly that Malaysian official number 1 is the Prime Minister. So now we know that the Prime Minister is implicated in many wrongdoings in America, what amounts to money laundering, purchases of buildings, financing films and things like that, from money which, according to the Department of Justice, came from one MDB. So we felt that he must be removed. Of course, very early on, we tried to remove him, but it was not easy, and he makes it impossible, in fact, because if you report to the police, you will be questioned by the police, and if you have a lawyer to help you, the lawyer too will be questioned by the police, arrested, detained, and tried for sabotage of the economy of the country. Of course, it was fortunate that the judge did not agree and these two people were acquitted. But the normal way of solving problems in Malaysia has been nullified by Najib, because if you report anything to the police will take action against you. Then of course we decided that we should move a vote on non-confidence in Parliament. The opposition parties decided to do that. But of course the opposition wouldn't have as many members as the government party. The government party obviously had a majority, and we couldn't have a vote on non-confidence because he has complete control over his party's members of parliament. So we couldn't get the kind of majority. So those two ways of taking action against him have been closed completely by him. It's controlled by him. And therefore we have to rely more on what foreign countries do. Of course then we were accused of trying to make use of foreign countries to undermine a democratically elected Prime Minister. But we can't do anything in Malaysia because everything is controlled by him. Not only Parliament, the police is controlled by him, the AG, Attorney General, who was supposed to take action against him, was dismissed on grounds of not being well. It was not a proper dismissal. And he appointed a new AG who says, after examining the reports by the central bank, etc., he says there is no case against the Prime Minister. So if you go through the police, and the police will, of course, pass on to the AG. AG has been saying he has done no wrong. There is no case against him. So this control over the police, over the Attorney General, and also over civil servants, make it impossible for the normal routes to be taken to have him removed. This is the situation that we are facing today in Malaysia, and of course now he has passed a new law. The National Security Council has been given fantastic powers. They can arrest anybody without trial, detain anybody, and if somebody dies or is suspected of being killed, there should be no inquest, nor should any question be asked in a court of law regarding the lack of inquest by the government. Under such circumstances, it is quite possible for people to be killed and buried without any inquest. So people live in fear. Lots of people live in fear because they don't know whether they might be the target for removal or not. These are the things that we have to face in Malaysia today. I don't like talking bad about my own country, about my own government, but I have no choice. Because in Malaysia, even if you say anything against the government, you are likely to be hauled up by the police. The police have now got tremendous powers. They don't have to have a warrant of arrest. They can arrest anybody. This is recently said by the IGP, Inspector General of Police, that he can arrest anybody without any warrant of arrest. People are really frightened in Malaysia because they feel helpless. They cannot resort to the law, they cannot resort to anything that is provided in the constitution or in the laws of the country. Should action be taken against them? Should they be detained or they should be charged in court under some spurious charges like sabotaging the economy of the country? So I feel that most of people present here know quite a lot. I think if you read the papers, you know they have given great details about what's happening in Malaysia. So I wouldn't want to talk too much about that, but I believe that you'll be interested in asking questions, which is more relevant, I think, for you. So I will stop there and let you ask whatever question that you would like to, and I will try to answer. Yes?
Recently,
I can stand up.
Okay, all right, can I just say, there are going to be a lot of people wanting to ask questions, so if you can keep your questions short and to the point, and put your hands up so I can sort of have a sense of how many people want to intervene. Okay? Yeah, you can start.
you recently met Anwar Ibrahim after about 18 or 19 years.
Sorry? Yeah. There's going to be a roving microphone,
Okay.
so please.
You recently met Anwar Ibrahim about after 18 or 19 years, and what started in 97 was a very bitter conflict between you and your successor. How do you see him now, and how do you see, what is your understanding or what is your opinion of Anwar Ibrahim, and how do you see his presence in the Malaysian political landscape at this point of time?
Well, he's serving a jail term, of course, at the moment, but he has also tried to take action against the government over the new law that I mentioned just now. I too was doing something about that. I've been writing about that in my blog. So there is a common interest between me and Anwar Ibrahim, and since there was to be a hearing in the court of law, I went there to be present, to hear what's going to happen, and there I met him, and we talked about the law about which both of us are concerned, and I think he appreciates that the problem of the country is the Prime Minister. He should be removed more than other issues.
There's a question there? Yeah.
One of your main policy was Vision 2020. I would like to know whether in the newly formed party, Parti Bersatu, will Vision 2020 will have any major part of the party?
We'll have to win the election first. But because Vision 2020 was launched during my time, we want to make Malaysia a developed country in our own mode, but we didn't actually spell out what we meant by a developed country. This present Prime Minister regards high income as a sign that we are developed. Now, when we have high income, it must be accompanied with high productivity. Otherwise, you will price yourself out of the market. But he's so keen on high income that he keeps on taking government money and just giving it to people. I mean, he has revised pay scale several times by 25%. I don't think the government has enough money to pay for this. Or what would happen, of course, is that the operation cost of the government is so big that there's not enough money left for development. So under him, I don't think we are going to achieve Vision 2020, because it's not about money alone. It's about the quality of life in Malaysia, about having people very well educated, standard of living higher, people doing research work in many areas. These are what makes a country a developed country. If you go by by the income alone, I think Saudi Arabia will become a developed country, but they don't regard Saudi Arabia as a developed country. Excuse me. So we need to go beyond just increasing the income. And the way he increases the income has made the government very poor, and I think the government will have trouble to pay some 600 billion ringgit in debt incurred by the government.
That's the question. Right here. Thank you to Doctor, first of all, for coming to speak to us here. My question is actually regarding the role of the people in front of you here and the problems that you speak of just now. I'm sure a lot of the people here, as you can see, are people from Malaysia. And some of us that are here are actually at a crossroads, whether or not to return back to Malaysia. And some of us are probably here because they're running away from the problems that you spoke of. So basically, just asking on behalf of the people that are here, what are we to do? What would be our role that you would suggest to combat the situation?
It's very simple. What you have to do doesn't involve much by way of risk. All you need to do is to make sure that the opposition parties are strong. We have recently launched a new party, which I am the advisor, and we are trying to recruit new members. Lots of people are joining, but the strength of the party is based on the number of members, active members that it has. We aim to get at least 1 million members. So all the people who wish to help us overthrow this government is just to join the party, whether it is some other political opposition parties, it doesn't matter, but please join up and show that you are concerned by joining up.
Thank you very much for your talk. Could I change the subject and talk and raise a question related to the economy? Could you give us an overview of the economy, and in particular, in terms of what more can be done encouraging foreign investment, you know, the controversies surrounding the Bumiputra policies and so on. And I'd also be interested in hearing about the prospects in tourism as well. Thank you.
Well, Malaysia was developed through encouraging to be becoming friendly with the business people, encouraging locals as well as foreigners to invest in Malaysia. That's what caused Malaysia to become industrialized. So if you create an environment that is conducive to investment, then the economy will grow. And in fact, the economy one time grew double-digit figures, but now it's still growing, but the figures are very, very small. And we are not quite certain whether the figures are correct or not. But if you want to grow the economy, you must show good governance. You must have the rule of law. You must be democratic. You must encourage people by being friendly with them, attending to their problems. For example, all business people would meet with some features, some problem. We used to have what we call Malaysia Incorporated. You know, Japan was condemned for being Japan Incorporated, but at that time I was Prime Minister, I saw nothing wrong in being Malaysia Incorporated, because we regard the whole of Malaysia as one big company in which we all have a stake, and the private sector can contribute as much as the government sector. In fact, the private sector can contribute much more, because they would be investing in businesses, in development, in building roads, etc., and also bringing in industries into Malaysia. So that was the reason why Malaysia, I think, prospered, did much better than many other countries which became independent after the war. So what we need to do is to show good governance, to be business friendly, to have the rule of law, to be very clear about what our intentions are, and not to abuse power, and certainly no corruption.
Well, thank you very much indeed. My name is Andrew Leung. I'm a China strategist. Considering your immense experience in international affairs, I'd like to direct my question to foreign relations of Malaysia. They say that when the elephants fight, the rest of the pond gets trembled. So in your opinion, how successful or what should Malaysia's foreign relations be? Its relations with the rest of ASEAN, relations with the United States, and relations with China? Thank you.
One thing that we believe in is that war solves no problem. Confrontation is very costly. This happened before when we just became independent, and we, in order to avoid confrontations and wars, we decided to form the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and I think it is one of the few regional associations that has survived and has achieved quite something in terms of friendly relations. But today we have China making a claim over the islands in the South China Sea, and of course this may result in confrontations with other powers. But for Malaysia, we believe that whatever problems we have with other people, we should solve them through peaceful means. We have problems with our neighbors, overlapping claims on the sea, on land, etc. We solve this problem with our neighbors. So with Indonesia and Singapore, we went to the World Court and they awarded 2 islands to Malaysia and 1 rock to Singapore. But with Thailand, there was a triangular piece of sea which is claimed by both Malaysia and Thailand. And we negotiated with the government of Thailand and decided that whatever we produce there, oil or gas or what material or mineral we produce there, we should share 50-50. I don't think many other countries solve their problem that way. But that is how Malaysia solved this problem. And we don't want to have to see a fight between big powers there. And as you see, we are the small people, will be trampled under by this element.
There's a question just yeah.
In the present climate, are you untouchable?
When you say I'm untouchable,
are you in any danger in the present climate?
Well, I don't really know, but I have been more open and I have made open criticisms against the government, and coming here to talk, of course, is not something that the government likes. But so far they have not detained me, but every time I say the wrong things, the police will question me. I've been questioned 4 times, but I told them that if you want to question me to answer, you charge me, or then I will answer your question. So far they have not charged me in court yet, but there is always that possibility. We are dealing with desperate people, and desperate people do desperate things.
Thanks again for coming here today. I'm a law student, so my question is from a legal perspective. You have stated today that the Prime Minister holds a lot of power over the police, the media, and the judiciary, especially what happened in 1980 after the Constitution amendments. So my question is, with the benefit of hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently during your leadership to improve the rule of law today in this country? Sorry, but in Malaysia.
Well, I amend the Constitution because the laws passed by the representatives of the people would only become law if the king signs it into law. That means that in the end, it's not the people who makes the decision. It is the king who makes the decision. And I thought that that should not be the case. So we amended the law to say that if the king does not agree with the law, he can send it back to Parliament with his criticism. But if Parliament then sends back the law to the king and he still doesn't want to sign it, after a lapse of 1 month or 2 months, the law becomes legal, it becomes the law. I was expecting problem with the Sultan, but I didn't expect problem with the Prime Minister. That was me at the time. But that amendment does not cover one thing. If a law encroaches on the position of the king, it must have the signature of the king. It's written in the Constitution. There are certain privileges of the king, and among his privileges is this right to approve any law that affects the ruler. And in this case, this particular law, it affects the right of the king to proclaim an emergency, during which time the laws may be suspended. But the Prime Minister has taken over this, giving himself the right to declare security areas, and in the security areas he can arrest anybody, jail anybody, and if they get killed, then there will be no inquest and that kind of thing. This is far beyond what was given to the king. And because it encroaches on the king's prerogative, then of course the king has a right to at least question the government, because in the Constitution, the king has a right to make reference to the federal court if he's not satisfied with anything.
Thank you. Questions?
Dr. Mahathir, with due respect, many people have suggested that you yourself have created the problems that we see in Malaysia today by, for example, taking the powers of the judiciary in the 1980s by setting of Salih Abbas, Tun Salih Abbas, etc. And then, of course, moving the power of the king in 1992, 1993. And also many people have also questioned your own track record in the 23 years that you ran Malaysia. But basically, what people are saying is that you yourself planted the seeds of the problems that we see in Malaysia today. What say you? Thank you.
I have a lot to say. Well, it is normal for people in the opposition to accuse the government of wrongdoings. They accuse me of all these wrongdoings, but they have never been able to show in real terms evidence that I committed anything, including with regard to the judiciary. I don't have anything to do with the judiciary at all. I only meet the Lord President or the Chief Justice whenever he presents a list of people to be promoted or to be appointed judges. That's the only time I meet members of the judiciary. Other times I don't meet. And you can ask of them whether they have ever been invited to my house even. Whenever I have some kuduri, some feast in my house, I never invite judges. But I was accused of interfering with the judiciary. I didn't interfere. What happened was that the Lord President, the Chief Justice, wrote a letter to the King to complain about the noise being made at the private house of the King because of construction work. And the King was very annoyed, the late President Sultan Johor. He was very annoyed because senior officers don't write letters like that to him. And worse still, copied the letters to all the other rulers. He was incensed, and he told me, dismiss this man. I had to tell him that I have no right to dismiss, neither does he. He may appoint the Chief Justice, but he may not dismiss the Chief Justice. To do that, you have to set up a tribunal. I told the king that. He said, well, set up a tribunal. So, what do? I complied. Unfortunately, the AG at that time did not want to involve the king's name in the process of the court. So he created, or he identified some words made by the previous Lord President, which were not friendly towards me. I didn't even know about them. But he avoided mentioning the king. So it turns out that everybody believes that I was the one who made the complaint and I was instrumental in dismissing the Lord President. It's not true at all. I was acting on the request of the king. On other matters, lots of things they say, what Najib is doing is what I was doing. Show me which one. Did I steal money? You know, when I sat down, the two prime ministers who succeeded me conducted investigation into the period when I was prime minister. They were looking for some, money, misdeeds that I committed when I was prime minister. They couldn't find a thing. I'm quite sure if they find anything wrong that I had done, they would have dragged me to court. But they didn't, because I was very careful when I was Prime Minister not to do things that are beyond my authority to do. I don't even allow my children to join the political party because I don't want to be accused of nepotism. Mokris, after I stepped down. I don't think it is fair, after I stepped down, in order to preserve my good name, I should deny him his own ideas about what his future would be like.
Do you want him to be the next Prime Minister?
It's not for me to decide, it's for the people to decide. If he can be popular enough to win election and become Prime Minister, that is his right, just like anybody else.
Yeah.
Hello, my question is, based on where Malaysia is politically, do you feel like you perhaps resigned as Prime Minister too soon?
People have to. Excuse me.
Resign too soon.
Hmm?
Did you resign too soon?
Oh, well, thank you. Lots of people told me that. I asked them, do you know these things was going to happen? They don't know. I didn't expect this thing to happen. I chose for my successor a man who was said to be Mr. Clean. He was very clean until he became Prime Minister. And then this present Prime Minister is the son of the most illustrious Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Razak. I thought that he would be like his father. How do I know he's going to steal money?
Okay, there's a question. Just down here.
I'll perhaps give. Yeah.
Well, you can first.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. My name is Aftab Siddiqui. I'm an analyst on South Asian issues. Taking advantage of your presence, I would like to ask a question, a little bit divergent from where we are now towards the Islamic world. And the disunity we see at this present time and the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And also, I would say, the incompetency of the Organization of Islamic Countries not really being active to resolve these issues. What's your comment? How do you see the Islamic world, going forward, basically? Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure you're a Muslim, so am I. But very few of us follow the teachings of Islam. We describe the teachings of Islam. We follow this Imam and that Imam and some leaders. They are not doing what is prescribed by religion, by Islam. If you read the Quran, it's very good for everybody. It will save you. You will be a good man, trusted. You will do justice to everybody. That's what is in the Quran. But we read it for the fun of hearing it, but we don't follow. And a lot of people, of course, read the Quran in Arabic and don't understand anything. See, if we go back to the teachings of Islam as found in the Quran, we wouldn't be killing each other. We are supposed to be brothers. A Muslim is a brother to other Muslims. If you kill a person, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, it is a sin. If you kill a Muslim, it is a greater sin. But what are they doing now? They're killing each other. Are they following the teachings of Islam? The problem of the Muslims today is that they have ignored the teachings of Islam. That is why they are in great trouble.
IOC, Islam, the Organization of Islamic Countries, what's your view on that organization?
They cannot agree on anything.
Please greet us. Yeah.
We had a talk by an eminent Malaysian lawyer and former politician last year, and what he was saying, what he was concerned about, is that opponents were being accused of being anti-Islam. And the suggestion was that the government was courting religious hardliners in order to justify their own actions. Is this correct?
Almost. I mean, quite correct, I would say. Because, you know, religions, all religions over the years get interpreted in different ways. And the people who adhere to certain interpretation do not tolerate people with other ideas. That is what is happening today. If you go against the orthodox beliefs of the people in the country, they will take action against you. In fact, in Malaysia, we have people who are called anti-hadith, anti the traditions of the Prophet. I don't see this thing in any verse in the Quran which says that this is a sin. But they have the authority, they have the power, and they do things which are actually not Islamic. But you cannot criticize them because they can charge you in their cause. Even when they pass a fatwa is not the law, it's just an opinion. But if you go against their fatwa, then you are accused of not being Islamic. We have all kinds of problems like that. But in Malaysia, generally the people are quite rational. And because of that, despite some parties making use of Islam for their political ends, we have managed to curb extremism in Malaysia. Although I must admit that some of them still join IS, for example.
There's a gentleman.
Yeah.
Hello, Tim. I'd just like to ask a simple question. Are you impressed by Rosmah's diamonds?
We are totally ashamed. My wife was also the wife of a prime minister. I don't think she ever bought any diamonds. We can't, with the money we get, we can't buy the expensive diamonds. But the way she was spending money is really unbelievable. You know, he comes to London, she came to London to do shopping. The shop actually closed so that she can do her shopping and without any disturbance. And the amount of things that she bought was fantastic. No prime minister, prime minister's wife can afford to buy not only the diamonds but even the clothing. The weddings they have is the wedding of the century. Such was the lavishness of that wedding.
And it's such a shame. There's so many poor suffering people in the country without food.
Yeah, well, lots more can be done with them. Thank you.
Questions then?
Your Excellency Mushtaq Lashari, Chairman of Third World Solidarity, I've heard you many times, but this is one of the things that I always inspire to. Do you think now this is looking at the Syrian situation, that when Russia came in, it became impossible for Western world to win over and overthrow Bashar al-Assad, that the unipolar world is coming toward the end, and not only it is moving toward a bipolar, but multipolar world?
Well, the problem we have, of course, we have two very big elephants which cannot tolerate each other. And all the time we are exposed, we become threatened by the fights that they have. But fortunately, although America sort of challenges China, but in the recent ASEAN meeting, they didn't take a strong stand on the advice given by the court, because that was unilateral. If it is bilateral, both sides making the reference to the court, then both are bound to accept. But one side going to the court and making a complaint, the court cannot really decide, because it's not proper not to give the other side a hearing. So ASEAN nations, 10 of them, are not very keen about fighting. They are trying to think about some peaceful means of solving problems. But of course, some powers like to test their weapons.
There's a gentleman in there. Then I'll leave them.
Never Green. Welcome back to London, Tom, for the umpteenth time. Welcome back. Could I go back to your mission in 2020 and just examine the education side of that mission statement? Your government and successive governments have been really very generous in allowing the arrival and the operations of foreign universities in Malaysia. That's good. But I think, if I'm right, the mission said quality education for all. Do you think that that mission statement will be achieved by 2020? And if not, what do you think needs to be done to make it possible?
Well, I think the education system in Malaysia needs to be restudied, and we should have a different approach towards universal education in Malaysia. But Malaysia has always provided education for everyone, at least up to the secondary level. For the tertiary level, we send lots of students all over the world. You go to any country, you will find Malaysians studying there. I went to the Crimea. I found Malaysians studying medicine there in Russia. So they want to be educated, and the government gives every incentive and lots of scholarship. But still, it cannot be enough. There will be some people who deserve to get scholarships, but just cannot get the scholarship because of shortage of funds and the like. But I think Malaysian education system, if compared to other developing countries, is quite good. I'm not happy with it. I think one of the subjects they miss is to teach people moral values. We find people who are well educated, qualified, with PhDs, but doing the wrong things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tun. My name is Azmi. I have two questions actually. I'll try to be short. The first one being, if you were to ask many young people now, let's say between 20 and 40, my age group kind of, they would want the opposition, for example, to have a prime ministerial candidate, which they cannot agree for the time being. But do you think that they will be able to agree on something on that front, whether PM candidate or shadow cabinet at the very least, meaning putting key men in key portfolios within the next 3 months if the next election were to happen in the first quarter of next year? Secondly, following from that is, what would be your vision of reform that is necessary with the government? For example, dispersing power from the office of the Prime Minister, or anything along that line. For example, separation between the portfolio of finance and the Prime Minister's office itself, which for the time being the Prime Minister is holding both, or any other thing that you can think of. Say 3 main priorities. Well, what are the main priority reform that the nation need now? Thank you.
I think we have a lot of very qualified people. They may not be active in politics at the moment, but I think if they are given a chance, they can lead the country. But if you name the Prime Minister now, then some people are going to be very disappointed. And that may split the party. So at the moment, we are not saying anything except that if the opposition wins, the most likely Prime Minister would be Muhyiddin. But it depends upon his party whether they will elect him as president, and it also depends upon the coalition to decide who should be the Prime Minister. So at this moment, we are not into naming the future president of future Prime Minister of Malaysia. With regard to reform, yes, we need a lot of reform. We never realized that Prime Ministers can abuse their power that way. Previous Prime Ministers did not, from the Tunku on to Razak, on to Hussein, and I suppose I can include myself also. But we need to look into the way Najib operates. He used money to bribe people, and because of the money, he's able to gain control over people who, having accepted something, now feel obliged to him, because he may also twist their arms for receiving money from him. But we think that the Prime Minister should not be the Minister of Finance. I was Minister of Finance for a short while waiting for a proper candidate to take over. But he has never let the Ministry of Finance be run by anybody else. I think there is a reason for that. So if at all we can decide, then we should put a bar to the Minister, the Prime Minister becoming the Minister of Finance. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to everyone. Okay, Tun, just now you mentioned that our ultimate aim now is to ensure that the opposition is strong and win the election. So I have 2 questions. First, how can you convince us that the opposition is ready to govern, given that there are few issues among themselves that they are not solved? Secondly, what if the opposition can't win the election, the coming election? What are the chances of us to have a better Malaysia after the election? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you cannot be very certain about the future. I had bad experience. I appointed 2 Prime Ministers, or I helped to appoint 2 Prime Ministers, and they let me down. They were good people, Mr. Clean and the son of an illustrious Prime Minister. They let me down. Nobody told me. No, people didn't say that I should not step down. Some people were saying, hey, how long is this man going to be there? Give way to some young people, which I did. Not because of pressure, but I did. But I didn't know what's going to happen after I stepped down. By the same token, we cannot be sure that future prime ministers will not abuse power. But we will have within the party ways of determining that future prime ministers would not have free hand, because in the new party we have not only the president, we have also the chairman, and the chairman also needs to be consulted over government matters together with a number of people, because we don't want the Prime Minister to make a decision all by himself. Of course he has a cabinet, but you know, cabinet sometimes can be so obliged to the Prime Minister, because he appoints them, that they do not put up any resistance. But in our party, the new party, we make sure that the power of the President, who will be the Prime Minister, should be subjected to agreement with a group of people within the party.
Thank you. Those gentlemen at the back who've been waiting very patiently.
Thank you, Tuan. You're looking very handsome, very sharp at the grand age of 70. You look 70.
Thank you very much.
I want to bring back the question to corruption and money laundering. I think after this scandal, it's not just a smoking gun, it's the evidence from the newspaper, from the Department of Justice. But we still see people still vote for the party with the president who implicated or allowed a big scale of corruption to happen. And then similar to the leader of the woman division within the party. Is it because people accept corruption that according to the law it's fine? So what actually is happening here? What you need to do or we need to do to change this?
Yeah, well, we all think that corruption is very bad. We condemn corruption. But to poor people, when you give them money, they find it difficult to refuse. We told them that it is wrong to accept money or anything else because this is corruption. But when they are poor, they don't think much about principles. They think about the money that they get. And we have a lot of people in the rural areas who are relatively poor. And you give them sufficient money, they will allow themselves to be influenced. And that is why the Prime Minister needs a lot of money. You just imagine giving 1 million ringgit to a member of parliament. He had never seen 1 million ringgit. He couldn't even speak after that. I mean, they find it quite impossible to refuse somebody who's giving them 1 million ringgit. They feel so obliged that they will support him. During the by-election that we had recently, we were expecting to win, but we lost. We lost because openly he was paying money to the voters and giving them electrical appliances and all kinds of lorry loads of electrical appliances were sent, and people were collecting them openly because he felt that whatever happens, he cannot be charged because he has control over the police and he has control over the Attorney General. So he is very blatant. That's why he says cash is king. He doesn't deny, he doesn't say nice things about it. He admitted that with money you can do everything. And some people, of course, are highly principled perhaps, and they will not accept a few $1 billion. How many of us here will not accept $1 billion? But it's a question of the amount. If the amount is good enough, Who cares? After all, it's only me.
Mr. Liu has changed that mindset that morality, corruption is bad. Because I think otherwise it will change with the PN or whatever.
Yeah, but if we think about the future of the country and your own children and grandchildren, you would stand up against corruption. But for that, we need people who are, well, among the better educated people who are relatively well off.
Okay, this lady, please.
Mr. Dara, but thank you very much, Kim, for remembering everything about Vision 2020 and beyond. And just one short question. How did Commonwealth help Malaysia, and how did Malaysia help Commonwealth when you were Prime Minister? And where do you think the Commonwealth should be now?
Well, when I became Prime Minister, I refused to attend the Commonwealth Conference. I thought that the wealth doesn't belong to the Commonwealth. The wealth belongs to only 5 countries, all the rest are very poor, so it's not common. Anyway, later on, I decided to attend. I even invited for them to have their meeting in Kuala Lumpur. And I tried to explain my views about things. I think if you want to call yourself a Commonwealth, let the wealth be common. See, otherwise you are displaying hypocrisy. That is something that I think people should not like. But in any case, the Commonwealth has done quite a lot of good for us. We have been well received wherever the Commonwealth is active. A lot of our students have benefited from the friendliness of Commonwealth members. And I think as it is such a good organization that the first Prime Minister proposed the Commonwealth of Islamic countries. Well, of course, it was changed later on. It was not called Commonwealth. But he was very much for the Commonwealth. And I think it is still a great organization. But of course, the member countries should be more generous. Otherwise, you can't do anything. Money talks.
Okay, so
Dr. Mahathir, there's one question here. It's in view that the opposition is extremely weak. How do you rate the role of civil society such as Bersih? And do you expect to see a sea of yellow come 19th of November when there's a call for some action? The second question is, insofar as Bersatu is concerned, do you foresee a time when a party such as yours or any other opposition party evolve into a party that can reflect the multiracial and multi-religious nature of Malaysia?
But currently, of course, the government coalition is made up of race-based parties. That is because race-based parties somehow or other gets a lot of support and they win elections. So while we do not like to see racism in the country, we have to accept that lots of people still cling to racism because they feel unsafe. So when we formed our party recently, we decided to make it a Malay or Bumiputra based party. Why did we do that? It is simply because that is what the Bumiputras want. If we go and say, well, we should be multiracial, for them it means they are not safe. So we have a Bumiputra party now, but this Bumiputra party accepts non-Bumiputras as associate members. And even now, lots of them are Chinese. A lot of Chinese are joining this Bersatu.
One of my friends just joined.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but while you do not want to see racism in Malaysia, you have to understand that lots of people are still feeling uncomfortable. You know, in other countries, they have one national language, they have one national culture. In Malaysia, we allow 3 different cultures and 3 different languages. So much so that the Malay language, which is supposed to be the national language, is not understood by a majority of the non-Malays. Whereas in Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia is spoken by people of Chinese origin, for example, simply because that is the way to get along in society. But in Malaysia, unfortunately or fortunately, people have learned English, and they resort to using the English language when speaking between different races. So we have a tough fight trying to bring people together. And one thing that you must appreciate is that despite the diversity, despite the differences in language, religion, culture, and even economic well-being, Malaysia does not exhibit the kind of racism that explodes into violence. There was in 1969 something, but that was stopped very quickly, within 2 years. We stopped that, and we went back to working together. So Malaysians generally, while they may have some worries about their own race, but they are not the kind who will want to fight because of their race. And they want to settle things in a friendly sort of way. And I think by and large, Malaysia has succeeded in remaining stable and peaceful throughout all these years and developed because of the stability.
Someone will say at the back there.
Thank you, Jun, for coming tonight to address us. I went through 3 periods of nationality. I was born a British subject in Penang. And I became Malayan when they formed the Federation of Malaya, when they signed the agreement. So from a British subject, I became Malay. And when I was in school, when they had Merdeka in 1957, when Tunku was shouting Merdeka in Merdeka Stadium, we little boys were swimming in a small river in Kajang. And after that, we have Kajang Satay. Then in my later year in life in school, I became a Malaysian in 1963. Now the question I want to ask is that I always find nationality is first before race. And when I was appalled some years back when a Minister of Education said, I'm a Malay first, I'm not a Malaysian, I was truly shocked. I would have thought, I'm very proud to call myself a Malaysian. I don't say I'm Chinese Malaysian, I say I'm Malaysian. Just like I met some Indonesian friend, I asked them, what nationality are you? I'm Indonesian. He never said I'm Balinese Indonesian or Aceh Balinesian or East Timor Indonesian. Never. Nationality is first. So I would hope that we should instill in our people that we are Malaysian. And you have answered the question early on was asked, because you are the advisor of this new party, and you are bringing your party to Bumiputra and Malays, and you allow non-Malays to be associate member. Yes. I would like to consider joining your new party.
Yeah.
As an associate member, what sort of privileges do we have? Would you be able to stand as a member of parliament or in the assembly for your new party?
Yes. Okay. Well, if you look at multinational countries, America, for example, and many other countries, multiracial, almost invariably they have one language, their national language, and everybody speaks the national language. Not only when they are talking to each other, but in their own homes with their family, they speak the national language. I was walking in the street in Osaka, and I heard Indonesian being spoken. And I turned around thinking that must be some Indonesian. They were all Chinese. They spoke perfect Indonesian language. But in Malaysia, if you suggest that everybody speaks Bahasa Malaysia, they will say you are trying to kill the language of the Chinese and the Tamils. So we accept, okay, you want to preserve your language, you preserve your language. But also the schools, they don't go to the same school, they go to Chinese schools, to Tamil schools. They don't go to the national school. They don't even meet each other. I made a proposal that we should have a school, a campus for the 3 schools. So that although they go to their own schools in their own language, but for certain activities, like assembly in the morning, they will come together and they will be spoken to in Bahasa Malaysia. That idea was rejected by, unfortunately, some educationists because they say, oh, we are trying to kill the Chinese language. But if we are prepared to use one language and one culture and to be together, I think we can achieve that. We are patient, we will wait, beyond my time of course, but eventually I think Malaysians, although they speak different languages, are much more united than most other people who speak the same language. Thank you.
So I have 2 questions for you.
Associate member, I will have to find out from the people involved.
There's a question at the back, and I think it will probably have to be the final question because Dr. Bhatti has been on the street for an awfully long time. So yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question for you. I have a question for you.
I have 2 questions for you. The first being related to race-based politics. I'm a big follower of the work you do at Perdana Leadership Foundation, and I heard a keynote speech you gave about social engineering. And I'm very disappointed to hear your assessment about how relevant race-based politics is still inherent in modern-day Malaysia, where a majority of the Chinese and Indian people have never even been to China or India, or have never had any kind of loyalty to that. So I'm going to move away from that because I think you answered that in an early question. My second question is a little bit more abstract. We're seeing governmental breakdowns and democracies failing their people, even in the most mature governments. I'm referring to Trump, I'm referring to what's happening with, say, Brexit, or even what's happening at home. With the rot being so systemic, it seems that layman, to us, there's nothing or very little to be done. And I wonder if there is an opportunity for us to shift towards a more sustainable and equitable kind of governance, once that decentralizes the power we give to governments, for example in issues such as energy generation or education, and returning it back to the people towards a more community-centric way of governance.
Well, if you want to do something, you will have to move. If it is political, you must be involved in political work and business and promote your own views about these things. But many people feel that Malaysia should change this and that and other, but they confine themselves to talking among themselves. But they should be active. We are dependent upon the next generation. The younger people must take an interest in the well-being of their country, which they will inherit. Their children and their grandchildren will inherit. So it is up to them to bring up these issues and to suggest ways of dealing with these issues so that we can be a really great country. We have the capacity, but some people are very reluctant to come forward and express their views. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, for me this has been a truly remarkable evening. Dr. Mahathir is incredibly generous with his time. I hope he's untouchable. And we're honoured by his presence. And I want to thank all of you too for your wonderful questions and for making such a, creating such a lively and productive discussion. So thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see you all here. But before we go, let's thank Dr. Mahathir.